Welcome in to SportsSource.tv. This is our overtime segment presented by Blue Smoke Cigar. Those folks are terrific. They are located right by Rafferty's, between Rafferty's and South Peters Road out in West Knoxville. It's a nice lounge. If you've ever been out there, it's a great place to relax and smoke a cigar. If you're tired of work, if you want to get out of the house, it's a great place to go down there, enjoy a cigar. You can get in your own leather seat there and instead of sharing one. Get in your own leather seat right there, grab your TV, grab a remote, tune in whenever you want, play cards with some buddies. If you're agitated, smoke a cigar and hit golf balls into their simulator. Nice stuff at Blue Smoke Cigar. Check it out. All right. We answer some of your questions here, your topics basically that you throw out on Twitter for us. I'm joined by David Ligon, VFL, Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com, and VFL Daniel Hood right down there. David and Daniel, I flip you guys a lot. I flip you off first, but yeah. I flip your names a lot. First, we brought this up at the end of the show. What's a bigger surprise? The fact that the strength and conditioning coach hasn't made the huge difference people wanted to see, or the fact that special teams, which started the year looking like typical Tennessee special teams, and now you're missing Barry, but the fact that special teams has kind of dropped off. What's the bigger surprise there, special teams or strength and conditioning?
I'd say special teams. We've seen the issues with the strength and conditioning program before, but yeah, I mean, they looked really good earlier in the year, and you lose a return guy, why do coverages break down, or why is the blocking stuff? That doesn't make sense.
And Trevor Daniel hasn't been his usual great self.
Yeah.
Daniel had his worst game of the season, I thought, against Georgia. And then, yeah, I think it's special teams for sure. I think when you look at what in strength and conditioning, we're not surprised they've had these issues, because it's hard to fix that in 1 year. I think you look back at what happened last year, I think that's still showing in what they're doing today. I think they've done a good job with Rock Gullickson, but can you really make enough difference in 6 months?
Which we talked about before the season. Is that something where it's easier to go the bad way than it is to get back in shape? I think it takes longer to get in shape than it does to fall out of shape, and I speak from experience.
Yeah, me too.
Daniel, I'm going to bring this next one to you.
Right.
The early December signing period, doesn't that play a larger role in firing a coach to get a head start on the coaching search and to save recruits? I talked about during the show. Where are you? Let me twist that a little bit, since we've already answered that question. Let me twist that a little bit. There's sometimes a team responds well under an interim coach.
Right.
There's sometimes it goes south. What do you think happens with this team if they make some kind of mid-October move?
I think it's tough, and because it can go either way. Because I think when you look at the back end of the schedule, this is Tennessee's most favorable schedule they've had in a couple of years, with how things are shaping out, with LSU, Vandy, and Kentucky not looking like the strength that they are. South Carolina, of course, doing what they're doing. And so I don't think the interim coach is going to make too much of a difference. More going to be how are those guys going to respond. I think the poor special teams performance goes back to, it was the same way my 2012. Play number 42 against Florida that year cost us our season. We lost every bit of confidence that we had as a team going forward, never able to gain it back. I'm afraid right now that one play against Florida that they had is going to end up doing the same this year.
I will say I'm not a big believer in the rush to make a hire just to save the recruiting class kind of thought, but I do think that having a class twist in the wind for a couple months with an interim coach is pretty damaging to a class. You've got a pretty good recruiting class to hold on to. I think that's one reason to consider. There are many reasons not to make a move now, but I think considering what a class would do given 2 months of schools being able to come in and not have a head coach to answer questions, I think that's a big deal.
I think it is a big deal.
And you have to move fast in December when you do have a chance. You don't have to rush it, but you've got to think about that, because the whole class will disintegrate if you hit the December signing period.
I agree with you. I'm not saying you can save it by waiting. What I'm saying is, if you're giving me the choice of rushing the hire, to say, the coach may be okay, we're going to rush it, but we got to save this one recruiting class. I say sacrifice the recruiting class. Take the bad year in recruiting. You're not going to get Nick Saban, but let's say you got Nick Saban, or you rush it and you get Mike Shula, but you saved the top recruiting class. Where are you better off with Shula? No, you're better off with the Saban. So there's no guarantee you get a Saban anyway. But I would spend more time worried about the coach than I would a recruiting class.
And I just echo that, because as a guy, when I was being recruited, my top schools all but one changed head coaches. I didn't look at any of those schools less. I mean, I was looking at a school. Yes, they changed coaches. But then I was like, okay, well, we'll hit pause here, and let's just see who they get, because that's going to have a big impact. So for me, when Notre Dame got rid of Bob Davie, I said, okay, well, that's probably not a bad thing. Notre Dame was Notre Dame.
Right.
They took a guy I liked at Georgia Tech and George O'Leary. So, whew, that's great. Notre Dame really just shot up the list. Well, he was let go 5 days later.
Right.
And at that point, Notre Dame was tossed aside, and Ty Willingham, there's just nothing he was going to be able to do. And then Georgia Tech, so O'Leary left there. So you sit and wait, and you've developed relationships with the guys that are recruiting you, the assistant coaches. Well, then they brought in Chan Gailey, who's a coach of the Cowboys. We'll see how things go. And obviously at Florida it was Steve Spurrier and then into Ron Zook. So, I mean, I think you go for the coach.
I don't think you have to rush it right now. If you're John Curry, if you don't have your list already of guys that you think would make potential head coaches and already doing your research, then I think that's your mistake right now more than anything else. You always got to have that list.
I think there's no benefit now to, as opposed to early November, mid-November, getting a head start on the search doesn't make a difference. In other schools, if you're trying to get first in line, so coaches will start back channel talking to you, I don't think that really works. I think other schools can jump you in line even if they make moves later.
Look, the LSU situation chops down a lot of these silly simpleton answers that are out there. If you hear an answer and it's like, wow, that sounds very simple, probably a dumb answer. Because I always hear people, dump truck full of money, you can get anybody you want. No, you can't. LSU, they offered Jimbo Fisher more money than he was making at Florida State. They got rid of Miles early so they could get the first in line. Went after him. I'm not leaving Florida State for LSU. I don't care what money you offer me. So you get Ed Orgeron. You also wind up trying to get Tom Herman, who went to Texas instead of LSU. So getting in line early doesn't mean anything. In terms of offering people more money, offering $50 million. All right, well, Tennessee offered Mike Gundy more than he was making at Oklahoma State. They didn't go offer him less. So they went and offered him more than he was making at Oklahoma State. He didn't come here. So the answer then is to give Mike Gundy $50 million? I don't think that makes sense. Mike Gundy isn't worth $50 million. Let's put it this way. If your answer to a major in-depth problem can be fit into 140 characters, it's probably a dumbass answer. Just my view. And there's some dumbasses out there throwing that kind of stuff out there. It's easy, just spend money. They offered Will Muschamp $4 million when he was the defensive coordinator at Texas. He said no. Next year he goes to Florida. It wasn't the money, folks. Sometimes it's not the right fit. Sometimes they just don't want to deal with what UT's going through. So it's not just this easy stuff of let's get early, so we'll be the first in line, which makes it guaranteed. Let's just throw money, that makes it guaranteed. Nothing makes it guaranteed. Nothing. There is no guarantee. And even if you get a good name, let me ask you this. In 2013, all these schools make hires in the SEC, 4 different schools. One of them goes and gets a guy that has won the Big Ten 3 times. He's been to the Rose Bowl. They're paying him big money. They stole him. Anybody here think Brett Bielema was going to suck? I didn't.
No. I thought we should have had him here.
There you go. You don't know. And he may turn out to be great. It seems like they're going to be patient with him. Yeah. He may turn out to be great. Who knows? But there are no guarantees. So these people that you hear or read that say everything's easy and simple, I don't think they've lived long enough to experience enough reality in life to find out that that's usually not true. There ain't much in life that's simple and easy as you make it, as you want it to be. Let me ask you this one here. This one comes in from someone, Blake Moore. Are the majority of UT fans looking at this wrong? Maybe we need to try to hire the best offensive coordinator instead of a head coach. Go ahead.
Last year, I think that thinking would have been in the right direction. But then, is Butch willing to do that? And from what I've seen...
Oh, you mean after DeBoard left?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I think last year was your time to correct a lot of the issues that you have now. Now, I don't think whoever you got, whether they're the best offensive coordinator in the world, they weren't going to fix the issues we have because you can only work with the players you have.
That's right.
But maybe things be a little better.
Well, I mean, that was a risk. Butch Jones took a risk. He said, it's my offense. I want someone who's going to run my offense rather than going out and getting someone else. It's not paying off right now.
I said all offseason it was one of the most underplayed storylines of the entire year that Butch Jones was not only choosing to go with Larry Scott as his offensive coordinator, but that he was investing so heavily in Larry Scott, from choosing guys that Scott had worked with before, and Kevin Beard, Mike Canales, he knew very well. He chose a Larry Scott-friendly staff and built this team, the 7-on-7 plans for the summer. He did all that based on what Larry Scott wanted to do. And so far, it's not worked out. I mean, you can't say it's Larry Scott's fault, but he chose to double down on Larry Scott after just 1 year as tight ends coach, gave him a chance. So far, hasn't gotten the results he wanted. And that's, again, like David said, you could have gone a different direction, brought in a big-name coordinator. He didn't want to do that. He thought his system wasn't broken.
The other thing that I think is difficult for Butch Jones, if your trouble had remained your defense, if it was your defense that had been blowing these games, like many of us thought it would be, he might have been able to do the old push the guy off the boat, feed him to the sharks, and save himself. But it's not shoot now. It's the offensive coordinator that he invested so much in. I don't think you buy yourself time by whacking Larry Scott if that's what he chose to do. Because I think he might have. It wouldn't have pleased a lot of fans, but I think it might have gotten him time with the administration if he had said, well, I've corrected the error at defensive coordinator. But the problem is the defense isn't your problem at this point compared to your offense.
I also think that's the kind of move you make after a 7-5, 8-4 type of season. I don't know if they get to that point right now. I think with this team, the way they're playing, if it gets worse than that, you're not even at a point where you can consider just making some staff changes.
And I think the only thing I'll add to it is I still question about what ability the players have to make their checks and audibles, but also not just the players, the coaches. Does your offensive line coach get to choose his 5 starters or someone else telling him? Is Larry Scott being able to say, okay, it is 1st and 10, I want to run this play, or is he having to fit in some mold that's being created for him? And right now I don't know where it is on each side of that, because I know last year on the offensive line, we had to start with something that the offensive line coach didn't want to start. And he made the change Virginia Tech week. And so with that in mind, it's like, you can't hire someone and say, but you got to do it this way. You got to let them express themselves in it.
Somebody points out here, I do not think the Vols are the brand they used to be 20 years ago. This will cost real money to fix. There's this perception that Tennessee doesn't spend real money, that they don't offer coaches real money. Well, you get what you pay for in Butch Jones. Butch Jones wasn't the first guy on the list. Again, you went after Mike Gundy. No, you went after Charlie Strong. Gundy was a surprise. Strong was the hottest name in the country at the time you went after him. You tried to spend money. Nobody wanted your money in that situation. So you wind up going to Butch Jones. And the other thing that's wrong with that is, okay, so if they were paying Butch Jones $8 million a year, now they'd be okay?
Right.
Because, well, you're spending. No, they'd say you're wasting money on this guy. So the whole spending big money thing, yeah, everybody does these days. It could cost $25 to $30 million if you change out this staff. Worst case scenario, you change out this staff, bring a whole new staff in, buy out for big guy. $25, $30 million, it's going to be big money. But in terms of this program, the brand isn't as good as it was 20 years ago. Recruiting has changed a little because now I think it's easier for kids to stay. I can go be a backup at Tennessee, or I can go start at South Florida and still be on TV every week where Mama can watch me. I think that's changed things in the last 20 years. And when you look at, not an and, but a but, I do think that it would be an easier sell roster-wise for a new coach now than it was when Butch Jones took over. I don't think there's any question. Even if they go 2-10 this year, I think people will look and say, yeah, but there's still some talent there. You just botched it, pun intended.
That's one of the reasons I thought going into the year that an 8-4 type of season could be sold to bring. Some people wondered if he goes 8-4 for a third straight year, do you bring him back? I think you could sell that type of season because you could argue they're ready to be competing for a championship next year. So I think that's a great point. This roster, you can sell a new coach on this if you go out there and point to this roster. But you're right. Also, this brand has taken a little bit of a hit over the last 2 decades, and the SEC's tougher than it was back then. Things have changed. The landscape has changed, but you can absolutely win at Tennessee, and this roster definitely helps sell the job.
And I think Tennessee right now has a great position, nationally in order to be one of your better teams in the country, because I think the state of Tennessee is producing more players right now than it has.
Unfortunately, most of it's in Middle Tennessee, which is as close to the SEC West as it is you. Yeah. But yes, you're right. It's within the 250. Even East Tennessee is producing a few more kids than they used to. The state of Tennessee is booming, especially in the mid-state, and that's good for Tennessee recruiting.
Well, I'd say too, though, no matter what your roster is like, I mean, look at a place like in Alabama. Now, they're winning championships, but if you're the right kind of coach and you're the right kind of recruiter, you'll be able to convince anybody, no matter who the guy is at that position right now, whether they're an All-American, future, Pro Football Hall of Famer, that you can come in and play if you've got the right sales skill.
I think so, and I think the other thing is, I had somebody this week tell me they didn't think Nick Saban could win here. No, Nick Saban couldn't win at Tennessee. Yeah, he could. I think Nick Saban, you could put him at University of Alaska Anchorage, and he could win because the guy, he's smart, and he's very smart, but he also develops players. And I think that would allow you to recruit nationally. Is Tennessee a tougher job than Alabama? Yeah, of course. It's a tougher job than LSU, too, where Saban also turned it around. But I do think if you get the right coach here, as we said earlier, it's not a guarantee you'll find them.
Right.
But if you got the right guy and caught lightning in a bottle, well, yeah, I think you can still win at Tennessee and win big.
Yeah, Tennessee. I think it's a difficult school to do that at. But if you find the right guy, you can have unbelievable success. I mean, it's been done here multiple times before.
Yeah. It's difficult, but at the same time, more and more schools are winning at a big level. Schools that didn't win before, Clemson is now a power. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. So things have changed a lot. And yeah, I think any coaching candidate's going to look at Tennessee as a place you absolutely can win big because other schools have done it. Tennessee's done it 20 years ago. They won a national title, less than 20.
Rick Neuheisel said yesterday before the game, he was talking about Butch Jones and his comments. He said he needs to stop with those, focus on winning. He needs to remember that there's a line of coaches as long as the Tennessee River that would love to be at Tennessee. I think to an extent that's true. I think any MAC coach would kill to get the job. I think a guy at Purdue would love to get the job. But if you can't get, if Texas can't lure Nick Saban from Alabama, if LSU can't lure Jimbo Fisher from Florida State, if nobody can lure Dabo Swinney out of Clemson, I don't know that Tennessee can go out. People think they're going to get this huge name. I don't know that you can get them. And if it comes down to Chip Kelly, if Tennessee went after a Chip Kelly, who had an NCAA show cause penalty over him, so those people who are saying, oh yeah, Chip Kelly, I don't know what this administration thinks of Chip Kelly. Plus, I don't know what you would think of Chip Kelly because he's an ass. And if you think Butch Jones is a meanie, Butch Jones is a warm fuzzy compared to the cold prickly that is Chip Kelly. But even if you go after Chip Kelly, let's say, and even if you get in first, let's say UCLA opens up. Where do you think Chip Kelly is more likely to go? West Coast, where he's always been? Or coming to Tennessee, where he's going to face Nick Saban every year? And when his offense was stopped by people, it was stopped by Auburn, SEC. I just don't think it's I think it's a great job for the up-and-comer, which no one wants to hear. But typically, Power 5 coaches at powerhouse programs don't move. Yeah. You don't see that.
At least not anymore.
Yeah. Beelum at Arkansas was an exception. Yeah. And it didn't work yet.
Even a guy like Justin Fuente has been thrown out there at Virginia Tech. I'm not sure it's a given he would come to Tennessee because of the ACC, if you get past Clemson and Florida State, you can win a conference championship.
Much easier to go to the playoff there than it is in the SEC.
In the SEC, you can have a good team and be sixth best in the conference. So I think, there's some reasons you might not be able to go get a guy at an established Power 5 program.
Let me find one more question that we can quickly throw out. Let's see. Sorry, this is great television, I know. But it's not on television. It's great video, so you'll wait. I appreciate it. Butch says they have to ignore the outside noise. Does that in itself show that I see what this guy's getting at. Does he practice what he preaches?
Yeah, no. I'll answer that.
Hey. We've talked about this on the show. They clearly listen. I think all coaches listen. This is the first bunch I can ever remember thinking, I think they're reacting. I think they're here's the thing. I think it was Neuheisel that was on Sports Talk this week. Vince Ferrara was talking about it. And he said, well, what Tennessee needs to do with that quarterback is open 5 wide. And I'll be damned if they don't come out there and what they open with, 5 wide. I think maybe a total coincidence. They may have no idea. But I think this group does listen. And when you say ignore the outside noise, that's a great point. I don't think the coach practices what he preaches.
You can't eliminate it. It's always going to be there. I mean, as a player, you turn on the radio.
This day and age.
Absolutely. I didn't have Twitter.
It is shit.
You had the newspaper, message boards, and the radio, and you still heard it. But yeah, you do have to ignore it because if you tune it in all the time, all you're going to start thinking about is how you're the worst player ever. Your coaches are the worst coaches ever. And you guys should just quit, and we shouldn't have a football team anymore. So it does nothing for your confidence.
At the end of the day, there's a reason that, Rick Neuheisel is on ESPN and not still at UCLA. Or Dean Chiswick. There's a reason you're not at Auburn. And so that's why it just goes back. I'm of the mindset now, and, I hate to say it, but if you're a head coach at a program, it's just stoic, unemotional, and you just got to, all right, you got 5 minutes. What do you want to know in 5 minutes?
Belichick them.
Or you can of course, Orgeron's struggling, but still go there and, all right, our roster is left tackle.
Yeah, you just read the whole thing,
He's from so-and-so, California, right guard.
That's what he did at Media Day, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think you have to at this point because you just got to focus on what you can control.
Ryan, you're in the, oh, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
I was just going to say, I think Butch Jones has worried entirely too much throughout his tenure about what the media is saying. He's to the point that he's, tried to control the message during his assistant coach searches and things like that, trying to spin Mike DeBoer as a great hire. Don't worry about that. Just hire the guy that you want and be confident in your hire and defend him yourself. But so many things he's tried to control the message from day one. He's worried way too much about that. I definitely don't think he's practiced what he's preached on that.
Well, and one thing is Saban listens as much as anybody. He's constantly railing about stuff that's written, said, spoken. He hears it. But Saban's winning, so nobody cares. No one pays attention because he's Nick Saban and he's winning. I don't think Butch is, again, I think a lot of these guys listen. I think he reacts a little too much. Not that, now I will say this, there were a lot of people who were offended by his media. They called it a rant the other day. He was pretty calm. He said it's fake news, creating drama, negativity. Well, I've said this before. I opened our show today by playing The Doors' The End, okay? If I'm a coach over there, I'm thinking, screw you. Well, they have a right to question the media. That's fair. It's 100%. Now, if they step over a line and say something I wouldn't say about them, personal stuff, that's wrong. That's wrong. But we have painted Butch Jones as some sort of devil around here because I think there's some folks in the media who don't look outside of Knoxville and realize, oh, it can get a lot worse. And because of that, I think that's become its own thing. So when I talk about Butch Jones reacting to the media, I don't have a problem with him questioning the media or saying we're negative or whatever. So what? If I can question him, he can question me. My problem is it doesn't do him any good to do that. I think he's wasting it. It's the energy vampire thing that all those coaches talk about, with the energy bus and that crap. He's listening to the energy vampires, and we're draining. He's wasting time on that kind of stuff, in my opinion.
And I think another problem that we have as people listening to him is like you're getting insight into a head coach's mind. That's one thing Coach Jones gives you. He knows what what he's thinking about. Well, I'm worried about a new quarterback going into his first game, and a head coach of Tennessee shouldn't sleep at night for thinking about things like that. But as a fan, that's not what we want to hear. We want to hear, oh, we got Peyton Manning back there. I think it's the best thing ever. But since we have that insight with young guys, with injuries and things like that, it makes us even more skeptical.
I think what's happened with the media, it's what he's attacking are not the media who are there all the time. He's attacking the media who are basically fans of the program and who look at this and are bothered by the things that most fans are bothered by. And they get emotional about the cliches, about what he says in press conferences, about the game day coaching decisions. Those things bother a lot of fans, and I get it, but they've taken it too personally maybe and just gotten caught up in it and have kind of just railed against him for months now. I'm
a little surprised that, here's the way I would look at it, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this more probably unless things do turn around, but I don't get the fact that the guy came in here, he immediately tried to embrace the traditions. He reached out to all the VFLs. He takes longer at press conferences to his own detriment than most coaches do, trying to answer everything that's out there. Can't you just say, he tried, he did his best. You can't deny the guy works 24/7. But it didn't work. We're going to have to move on. The idea that these people, we got to get him out of here. The number of people who've cussed him and hate him. I've had people tell me, get that ass out of here. What has he done to you other than not win enough games for you? I don't get the hate. Derek Dooley, he was a jerk to people. That was a different deal. I got that. He was a jerk. This guy's not a jerk to people for the most part. Nobody's 100% liked, but he ain't Derek Dooley, and he's probably a lot nicer than Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. So I just think he's been beaten up a little more than he should on that angle.
Yeah, I think at this point he should just, use a cliche like he likes to, circle the wagons and just not focus on it. If he wants to change his demeanor and come to a press conference and be short and curt and be done with it and go back, don't focus on the outside stuff. Focus on getting your team better, improving your players, fixing the things that need to be fixed on the offense and making sure the defense doesn't regress, and do what you're paid to do, and that's coach the football team and win games.
I said all last year that he should start Belichicking people.
Yeah.
And I still think.
And that's one less thing for him to worry about.
When they ask you, hey, was there a fight between these two guys? Is that what led to the injury? You just say, look, we're here to talk about Georgia. That's the only thing we're here to do. It's Georgia, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
If you have a question about Georgia, that's what we're talking about. Okay. That's it. Move on. Yep. So people would still be griping, but you haven't given them extra stuff to gripe about. Just give them the basics, and if they don't like it, move on.
He should start wearing a hoodie with cut-off sleeves just as symbolism.
There you go. All right. Daniel, Ryan, David, thank you very much. I got your names right. I didn't flip anything. Steve, Bobby, Joe, I appreciate it. All right, we'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Thanks to Blue Smoke Cigar. See you next week.